She said that American soccer fans, most of them aren't smart. They don't know the game. They don't understand.
Gio.
That guy Gaspacho.
Forbes can take a lame gorilla, okay?
Advice, did you know that Arsenal died?
He's got me buzzing.
Up the talkies. It's hard to up them anyway.
I'm not even gonna comment on that. And now we will get into our Premier League report card. We'll be going through every team here and giving them a letter grade A to F. And Nick, I will start with you with your beloved Arsenal. What are you giving them here?
I struggled with this one. Probably like there's only 2 or 3 clubs that I struggled with more than Arsenal. I'm giving them an A minus. So I'm gonna say just barely an A. I think we've had a really good season. I think at times we were the best team in the Prem. I loved the progress that we made. Declan Rice was such a huge addition. The shift in mentality that he brought to the entire squad, as well as the experience that we gained from last year, was huge. We took Man City to the final day. That did not happen last year. We finished like 5 points behind last year, but really we were out of it for a second. So, I'm gonna give it an A. That being said, at the beginning of the year, I did choose Man City to pick to win the league, but I did say that we could win this league. And any year that you don't, when you have a squad this good and you play such good football, and for God's sakes, you finish with 90 points, like it's a slight disappointment. And nothing will get the taste out of my mouth or that feeling out of my mind from when we lost to Villa or when we came and did this podcast after winning on the final day, only to see that City had won as well. So I don't. You could argue B plus here, A minus. I'm probably biased, and I give them the A. But I'm gonna stick with my A minus. Do you agree with that, Flex?
I think I would have leaned towards a B plus, but I see the A minus. I mean, they had one of the better statistical seasons in Premier League history.
It's our best ever season.
28,
it's literally points
wins.
wise.
Yeah. I mean, it is wild. It is just obviously, I think, a disappointment. If you are coming off of last season, you want to prove that you can win the title after last season kind of bottling it away, and this season having the lead at a certain point, and again, just small amounts of results that drop you down to a point where Man City was just had a stranglehold and winning out. So I do think I'd maybe go B plus, but I get the A minus because it is an insanely great statistical season. So no qualms with your ranking there. I will move into Manchester City here. I gave them an A. I think just a simple A. They won the Premier League. It is what they need to do. I wouldn't give them an A plus. I wouldn't give them really anything else because, I mean, they just did what they're expected to do. I don't think it's their best season ever. Obviously, they didn't run away with it, didn't get over 100 points, didn't do all that crazy stuff, but they win the league. And when you win the league, it just has to be an A. Is there anything more to that, Nick, or do you think that's kind of spot on?
No. When you win the league, you get at least an A, and an A plus is just from there. There's no A minuses when you win the league. There's A or up,
Yeah.
and A is definitely solid. I agree that it's not an A plus. Also, when you look at their transfers, Josko worked out at the end, Gvardiol there, but Nunes and the whole Calvin Phillips situation and how they handled Jack Grealish this year, there was some definite cracks, and just at least for the first half of the season, not their total dominance. Although if you look at their last 28 games, they haven't lost a goddamn game. So
Yeah.
maybe that's being a bit facetious, but yeah, I think A is the right call here for sure.
Yep, that does factor in those transfers and stuff. I will go with a second one here before we get over to you, Nick. I went with Liverpool getting a C here, which may be slightly harsh for them finishing in third place, but it was Jurgen Klopp's final season. They had a decent amount of investment into the club. I know they went through a lot of injury woes that hurt them in their depth and what they were able to do, but Jurgen Klopp's last season, they were trying to win a title, and for a long portion of the season, they were in first place and in that pole position, and they dropped really completely out of it. They're behind Arsenal in second place by 7 points by the end here. It's passing. It is a C. I don't think it's D. I don't think it's a monstrosity that they fell that much. But I also don't think it's a B. I don't think it's something good to be looked on. It was disappointing. Is that kind of how you see it, or do you think I'm being a little too harsh on them here?
I see. I think you've convinced me because at first I was going to say that's pretty harsh. I would have given them a B off the top of my head. I did not realize there were 7 points behind Arsenal.
Yeah.
That is rough. That means they're 9 points off the title. That is from where they were. We've talked about their expectations changing, and they did change. And because of that, they kind of flopped. So I think C is okay. I'd go closer C plus B minus. Um, just thinking about the start of the season, their expectations were not to win a title. A lot of people had them in their top 4, but kind of fighting for that 4th spot with some other teams. I think some people had them in 3rd. So you could say they met expectations there. They didn't know that Klopp was leaving, but that being said, they played their best football the first half of the season, not the second half, and that's a fact. So, yeah, maybe C plus. I think you're right though. If you're choking away the title, they led this league more than any other team in. They led this league than any other team in the Prem. So, for more days up top of the table. So to finish 9 points off the title after doing that is pretty disappointing. That being said, you look at their transfers, McAllister, I think, is a really, really, really good starting 11 kind of player. I think he's proven himself to be that. Some question marks around Gakpo. Seems like there's some weirdness with the Darwizzi situation. They're definitely going to have to figure this thing out with whatever this guy's name from Feyenoord is. Arne Slot. So, yeah, maybe C is right. I'd go C+, but I think you're right.
People
C+
are going to be
fair.
mad about this on Twitter. Just putting that out there.
Yeah, they
It's
might.
okay.
They might. But
That's fine.
it's a very disappointing. They very much so choked towards the end. They didn't show
Tell them
a championship mentality.
Tell them to listen to the pod. I think
Yeah.
we
I'll
explained
tell
ourselves
them.
well.
Okay, hang on.
We'll see if they get some context. But Nick,
Tell 'em.
I will give it to you for the next two, which are Aston Villa and Chelsea. Where are you ranking them here in terms of their grades?
Yeah, I think Villa has to be an A+. I don't think that they were expected to finish top 4, and I think that's fair. And I think a top half finish was expected. I think a top 7 to top 6 finish was if you felt really good about them. Yeah, if you felt really good about them, then you liked that. Pretty optimistic. That's a good word for it. Top 4, I don't think they would have. I don't think even Villa fans could have realistically said it is there. I don't know about crack, but and yes, it came at the expense of Tottenham, who shat down their pants at the end of the season, because Villa didn't have a great form to end the season. But you look at how they performed in some big games. A very exciting game against Man City at Villa Park in the first half of the season, even though they laid down and died in the back half. Screw you, Villa. But beat Arsenal twice. They played some really exciting football, have some really good players, all the while missing Tyrone Mings, who was their captain, a really important player for them, and had dealt with other issues. I know early in the season they were having some left back injury issues. So I think you can be pretty happy with them. The only minus, I don't know. They just signed Unai Emery to a 5-year contract extension. Shout out to him. Way to get the bag. Maybe the Zaniolo transfer hasn't worked out quite how you wanted. He's been more of a rotational guy than anything. Maybe the Diaby transfer hasn't been as good as you hoped when you saw those first month and a half of the season. But I think at that point you're just nitpicking. So I think it's for sure an A+. Being back in the Champions League is huge. I hope they're able to strengthen their squad depth and really just raise their ceiling a little bit, because I don't know how many true difference makers they have. So maybe a couple high profile signings will help them establish themselves as perennial top 4 contenders. I gave them an A+.
Yep, I
Outside
100% agree.
Yeah, after Villa we went with Chelsea. And Chelsea
They're a tough
was
one.
probably the most difficult one for me to do, I'd say. I'd say Chelsea was really, really tough. I went B-. That's where I went with Chelsea, because finishing top 6 was impressive. Getting European football, yes, it's the Conference League, but still, I found that to be an impressive feat. So I am going to give them a B minus. The negative, well, they spend $1 billion goddamn dollars. They spent
The B
$1
is for
billion
billion.
dollars. Yeah, B is for billion, and they looked so inconsistent. They looked so out of order at times. I mean, some games they looked like world beaters. Some games it seemed like that midfield disappeared. Again, I have real questions about that midfield. Whether Conor Gallagher gets sold or not, I think that I don't know what you do to fix it because what are you gonna do? Buy another $100 million midfielder? I think they kind of put all their chips in the center of the table on Enzo and on Caicedo, and I really just don't like that compliment at all. So the Cole Palmer thing is huge, which I think bumps them up higher. Being able to have found someone like him, a homegrown talent for that price tag is insane. And he was absolutely phenomenal this season and really carried them to the top six. So B minus is what I went with. What do you think about that one, Flex?
I think that's fair. I think start of the season, they're coming off of a awful finish. If you told them sixth, you're flirting with the idea of fifth. They're all right with that. And I think certainly as kind of half the season went on and they were in 10th, 11th and kind of teetering there and looked like they were kind of stagnating there, I think it was impressive how they finished down the stretch, getting in there, and I think Cole Palmer is a massive reason why they find themselves in a B minus position. Is he carries that grade up probably like a full letter grade because of how goddamn good he was, and
Yeah, for sure.
when you have a star like that, that makes the season a lot better for them. But yeah, I agree. B minus seems fair enough, and moving to another Big Six club, we will do Tottenham and Newcastle next. Tottenham, I gave them a C plus. And a C plus is an interesting grade here. They were also one that I somewhat struggled with because they were such an up and down team here.
Ahead of or
Start of the
behind
season.
Liverpool?
Above
Ahead
Liverpool.
of
Above.
Liverpool.
Okay.
So obviously Liverpool had a better season, but these two teams kind of had similar seasons where they started off pretty good. Then they had stretches where the depth was really tested. And Liverpool, down the final stretch, kind of fell off. And so did Tottenham. They both kind of fell off towards the end. The expectations for Tottenham, though, were much lower than Liverpool. You had just lost your best player, Harry Kane, to Bayern Munich in the summer. You brought in some players like Madison that could help out, but I don't think you brought in anybody that was really like, oh yeah, he is the step-in replacement. Will certainly help out all the way. It was going to be a kind of replaced by committee for them. And that committee got hurt. And then they dropped a lot of points. And still, when they were healthy towards the end, they dropped even more points. I think if you looked at the start of the season and said, hey, you know what, Tottenham, new manager, you lost Harry Kane, you finished 5th place, you're flirting with 4th the entire season. I think they're like, oh shit, all right, that's kind of right where we would think, right around average of what we would probably be hoping for. And you know what? They had some good spells. They looked like they could figure it out. I think C plus is here. I think I could see them at a C, just a generic C as well. But I went C plus here just for the form they did show, other than that kind of massive stretch of 5 games where they got like 0 points. Nick, do you think that's a fair assessment?
Go like C minus D plus. I think there are some real issues at that club. I think it comes just from the pure mentality of the club. Leave it at C plus. That's fine. Leave it where it was. But me personally, I would go lower just because I think Ange is like stressing. I think he's like, how am I going to turn this around? I think you could see that at the end of the season with the reactions to that Man City game and how they kind of were excited to miss out on Champions League football. And I think this grade could have like if they had tied Man City that game, if they had snuck into Champions League football, this could have been like a close to an A in my opinion for Tottenham. But then you add the real foundational issues. You add that with honestly some transfers that make me pretty nervous. The James Madison thing's a weird one to me. I thought that was a home run signing. I thought he looked just like I thought he would early, and then just to disappear for such a long time is a bit crazy to me. I think like 3 months. 3 months he did not look like a good player. I get he was injured for a little bit, but he came back for a while. So the Mickey Mandovan thing, he's phenomenal. I'm scared about muscular issues with him. He's such a physical freak, and it feels like he relies on that so much. The Udogi thing, same thing. Um, and yeah, I mean, they just signed Timo Werner today. We'll on loan. We'll talk about that in a second. It feels like that's the profile player they're going to be able to get. I don't think that's good enough to get into the top four. I know it was almost good enough this year, but also almost doesn't mean shit. So I would have gone lower. But what do you think about Newcastle, which I also think you have an interesting grade for them?
Newcastle, you're talking about going low. I went low for them here. I gave Newcastle a D. And that does seem low off the get-go, but when I was starting to think about it, this was a team that was in the Champions League this year. Everybody thought with the amount of investment, with the amount of talent that they were stacking up there and the trajectory that they were on, that they would be challenging for Champions League, would be in Europe. They end up not in Europe at all, so I think that does hurt their letter grade. Obviously, that Manchester United win in the FA Cup kind of hurts that a bit. But quite honestly, Manchester United were not that great this season. Chelsea were not that great this season. They were super inconsistent. Same with Tottenham, and quite honestly, whatever Aston Villa did is exactly what I thought and expected Newcastle to be doing this season, in fighting for that still same fourth spot that they were able to get last season. It's it's man, it's just a disappointment from them. You have that much investment, that much of just that upward trajectory where you think you have all this talent that's going all the right way, and they went very much so in the wrong way. I think at a lot of times during the season, I thought, what the hell is going on? There were so many games where they were just wildly inconsistent, that they were absolutely played off the pitch. They were blown out in several games. It wasn't like they were teetering back and forth and, oh, they won this one. Oh, it's a close loss there. It was, they were getting blown out and they were sneaking out some results. And then, yeah, they'd blow out a few teams, but it didn't look like the next step in their direction. I think the next step, or just an average step, if they were in fifth and, in Europe, I'd say, you know what, maybe that's average for them. They get a small regression from their high in the Champions League, but to be completely out of Europe with the amount of money they spent, surely going to be facing some financial stressors here in this summer. I can't give it the C, the average grade. I think I have to give it just a little bit below with that D. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, I don't hate that. I'd go D plus, C minus again, somewhere around there, just a tad bit higher. The injury crisis was huge. But you were spot on with a lot of things you said. And I think the biggest thing is against big opposition, they didn't look great this year. Like they
No.
were last year, they were playing like big teams really tight. In fact, that
Their
Arsenal game
defense
last
this year
year,
was god awful.
exactly. So, like their best game was that win against Arsenal. That was extremely controversial, obviously, or that tie or whatever it was. So yeah, I don't know. And then add that to the fact that the biggest part to me of why this season's a disappointment is you have now no European money coming in. And so you can, you're backed by the Saudis, you can continue to spend big money, but it seems like they're trying to pinch down on that with the FFP stuff. So I think this means you're losing one of, if not both, of Isak and Guimaraes, and both of those guys are what made your team Champions League level team. I was really wary of them coming into the season. I had them finishing fourth for me. Um, and yeah, it's a disappointment, and what you said it perfectly. It's a step back for sure.
It's a step back. Nick, I am more excited for this next one. Our last Big Six team here to go through our last long review in terms of grading. It is Manchester United. What have you given their turbulent, I think is a good word to describe it, season?
I went C minus. I went with a C minus for Man U. I think it might have been a D minus if they hadn't won the FA Cup. So let me be very clear there. But a season with a trophy, to finish your worst ever season and still have silverware, it is pretty solid. I'm not gonna say it's definitely like not the standard. I think a lot of people. This was a Champions League team as well, so I think a lot of people had them finishing much higher, finishing in the top 4. They finished 8th. They don't look good doing it. So they won a trophy though. That's really all it's hanging on. A couple other silver linings. Kobe Mainu seems to have established himself as a Premier League regular. Certain moments where he looked really good. I think there are some inconsistencies, which was expected for a guy his age. He wasn't be able to keep that purple patch the whole season, but overall, just looks like a really good, a good to really good Premier League player, that kind of level. So with room to grow. So that is great, obviously. I see a lot of people hating on Hoyland. I still like the profile. I think that team was just such a mess that he might need rescuing at some point in his career, but I still think he's overall a positive for your team. And they did have real injury crisis. Some of these lineups that they were playing pretty late in the season were pretty awful. So there's that. I think you could argue D here if Ten Hag stays around still, even with the FA Cup, and you keep Ten Hag. I think you can argue lower than a C minus, but it's hard to balance everything with Man U. They're definitely a disappointment, so I could see you arguing lower. I went with the C minus. Your thoughts there?
Yeah, I would have gone lower there. I think lowest finish in Premier League history. I would have given them a D. If you're going just off of how they actually look watching them play, I think a D is appropriate. Kind
Or
of
an
like you
F?
said, that F, yeah, honestly. But the FA Cup, that's where I think that Eric Ten Hag talk is so kind of crazy and somewhat stupid. Is that yes, you're in Europa League. That's a fucking miracle. You guys shouldn't have been in Europe at all. And certainly after the way you've been playing, it is the worst season in the Premier League history for Manchester United. You're not doing well, but you find yourself in Europa League. And you have to say, if you're Manchester United, yeah, you were in Champions League and you thought maybe you'd be better, but also adjusting for how many injuries they had, how players are playing, it's yeah, I guess C minus isn't that far off, but
It's hard
man,
to
if they do
figure out
not
where you're gonna
have
put
that
them.
FA Cup victory, holy shit, they are lower. If
I
they are
think it
not in
could be an
Europa
F.
League,
I think it
yeah,
could be an F if they don't have
man,
F plus.
yeah, it would be
Uh,
a
we'll
scary scene.
we'll hit these last ones a couple a bit more quickly. Crystal Palace, I went B plus. Tale of Two Seasons. I don't know why they kept Hodgson,
Absolutely.
but man, did they correct it with Oliver Glasner. Um, and that team's headed in the right direction. It seems like he's committed his future to there, which is great. If they can keep both Eze and Elise, wow, watch out. They could be potential surprise top 6 contenders next year. And weren't too far off. Finishing ninth is pretty solid. So I went with B plus with Palace. What do you think about West Ham and Brighton, Flex?
Yep, you're spot on with Crystal Palace. I think Glasner really turned that entire season around. West Ham, I went with a C. I think if you're looking at them, they had a really hot start to the season. They looked like they could do something a bit more than this, but they kind of fizzled out towards the end. But if you look at who's above them, I'm not really sure you would say that they should be above any of them in terms of the talent on the squad. So I think a C. They had a bang average season when it all was all said and done. And then with Brighton, man, their expectations were high. I went with a D. They had high expectations, and for so much of the season, they could not score a single goddamn goal. I understand they are a small club. They were not maybe expected to do this great 2 seasons ago, but you got De Zerbi. Expectations were high. You underperformed for that. Also, another team that was hurt by injuries. Didn't do great in Europe. I think overall, just rather disappointing. I don't think you're going to have the massive sales that has really been spurring Brighton on and their rise. So hurts them a bit. Nick, what do you have for our cherries and the Wolves here?
Yeah, a couple of teams that I rated pretty highly this season. I gave Bournemouth an A minus. I thought this is their highest ever point finish and Premier League table finish that they've ever had. Obviously, they didn't have a season like Arsenal, Man City, or Aston Villa, but they for their expectations are phenomenal. Put them on the right, Palmer. So I'm giving the Cherries an A minus. It seems like they found the right guy in Ariola or whatever his name is. I think they have some pretty good players. The only guy who's gonna leave seems like it's gonna be Solanke, but they already bought Enes Unal to kind of take his place if that's the case. And I think they can attract a decent level player this summer with the Premier League money and where they finish. So I like what they have going on with their project. I went with an A- there. Over to our producer P's Wolves. This one was tough. Also, I went with B. I went with a B. I think you could argue B minus, but at the end of the day, they honestly just have some really good players. Mateus Cunha and Neto are phenomenal. I think there's not really too many rumors of Cunha leaving. Neto maybe some, but with the late injury, maybe not so much anymore. João Gomez, I'm a huge fan of in midfield. I think he's phenomenal. And they have some real leadership in some of those veteran guys. I think there's a danger that they can fall off. So I'm pretty interested to see what they're gonna do this summer. Um, I think they need some investment there, but you know, this is about where I would have picked them to finish.
I
So
accept
you
this
could
grade.
argue average, but I really liked a lot of the football they played. I like Gary O'Neill quite a bit, so I might be being generous just because Palmer's here, but I won't be. Um, Everton is our next one, and I'm very interested to hear about this one, Flex.
I think you were a little high on both of those squads. I would say that they struggled quite a
You
bit
shut your mouth.
for large parts of the season, especially Bournemouth. They were
But
not
no,
doing hot for a large part of the season, but they did turn it around
compared
quite a
to
bit.
what they are, they're not.
Yes.
That's Bournemouth's best ever finish in the Premier League.
No,
That's
I know.
a
I
good
think
goddamn season.
yeah, it's a good season for them and what they're maybe thinking. I think both these sides were certainly thinking, let's avoid relegation. Going to Everton here, I gave them a D plus. I wanted to go C minus, but I thought that might be a bit of a fan bias in me. This was a very bad season for Everton. For I would say probably 80% of the season, we looked like one of the worst 5 teams in the league. And for about 80% of the season, we were in the bottom 4 or 5. Relegation at a certain point, I thought was almost certain. Luton Town looked like they were giving everybody a fight. We're scoring on everyone, and we're about a point away from us. I was scared shitless. Sean Dyche did not look like he was getting the boys ready to go. There were mistakes, mental errors made from every single player. Beto was our option up top, and he was not doing well. Dominic Calvert-Lewin was not kind of our hero that we kind of need him to be. Jordan Pickford did step up, and that saved us. And down the stretch, holy shit, what a run of form to save us. But we were damn near F and relegation. We were able to move it all the way up from not just a D minus, a D, but all the way up to a D plus. I'd say borderline C minus. I would want to give it to them. But man, Nick, it was an ugly season for us Toffees. We pull out a pretty safe exit out of here. We get to our 40
Pause.
points. Is that good for a D plus?
I'd go C minus. I'd give them a little bit more credit
Oh,
just because of the
yeah.
point deductions. They would be a little bit higher in the table. Especially, I think there was whispers of relegation at the start of the season before a ball had even been kicked. So the Beto
Yeah.
thing hurts huge. That's a big splash of money that did not work at all. But
FA Cup goal.
you're here. You made it. At the end of the day, that final
Cup.
weekend, those last 2-3 weeks, you weren't even worried about relegation because you'd already secured it. And you have to give them some credit for that 2-0 win at against Liverpool. So
Was massive.
I would say C minus.
I think C minus. I like that better. I didn't want to seem too biased there. But you know what? I love it. I love it. And actually,
I think we skipped Fulham, by the way. You
I
got
believe
Fulham?
we did skip Fulham. Yeah, Fulham. I got a little ahead of myself with the talk about the Toffees. I gave Fulham
Fulham,
a
whose badge we do not
C.
have.
Yeah, I don't know why
Yeah,
it's not
I
on
was
this
looking for
ranker,
it here. I
but
was like, wait.
no wonder we forgot about it. It is just a forgotten club. And honestly, it's kind of what the season was. They were not really anything great. They weren't anything bad. I gave them a C minus. I think they struggled a lot of times to score goals and kind of missed Mitrovic quite a bit. Missed kind of having an actual striker that could put away any type of chances for them. they weren't really flirting with relegation too much. They weren't really flirting with much else either, though. So C minus for me, slightly below what I think they could have been capable of with a good striker. But you think that's fair enough, Nick? And bring us to Brentford and Luton here.
I think C minus is fine. Fulham is definitely the forgotten team of the season. They kept the most interesting thing that happened to them was João Palhinha's failed transfer. So they
Yeah.
never replaced Mitrovic, and it was kind of a mess. And he's probably gone this summer too, so not great. I don't really love Marco Silva, anyways, as a manager. With Brentford, I went C minus. I'm a big Thomas Frank guy. I'm a big Bees guy. You guys know this, but at the end of the day, I thought this was a team that could have. I put them last, maybe above Everton, but that's just about it. No, honestly, below Everton.
Yeah, they should be below Everton.
And they had higher expectations for the season, in my opinion. Now, the Tony thing hurt. They only had him for 45% of the season or so, 40% of the
But
season.
even when he was back,
Yeah, he looked okay when he was back, but the team didn't. He got benched a couple times. So I don't know. I expected more. Maybe I just had too high of expectations for Brentford, and that's why they're in this area for me. But I like the team. I like the manager a lot. I like some of the talent there, and so it was surprising to see them kind of struggle and even flirt with relegation. Not really, but at least a little towards the end of the season. So, um, at the end of the day, Brentford's not the biggest club, so I can't call it a D or an F or anything like that. But I think they definitely underachieved based on at least my own expectations. Luton are relegated, so I'm giving them a D plus. We're putting them D plus. They were exciting. Maybe their commitments. Yeah, I'd put them above Newcastle. Sure.
yeah.
Maybe their commitment to playing their own brand of football hurt them at times because they leaked a lot of goals this year. But they were also a fun watch, and they should be the highest ranked relegation team on here. The only one with really a chance, but never had enough talent to stick in this league, in my opinion. So Luton, it was fun having you. I don't think we'll see you again soon, but I sure would like to because it was a good time. So shout out to Rob Edwards and the entire Luton squad. But B plus is my rating. Wrap us up with these Burnley and Sheffield teams. Oh, Nottingham and Burnley. Sorry.
Not. Yep, so I went with Nottingham Forest, Gio Reyna squad. Wanted to give them an F just for what they did to Gio Reyna, but instead, I will give them a D minus. Because holy shit, the amount of investment that they have put into this squad, where they got that point deduction, which obviously did hurt them, but they looked god awful. They had spent so much money, brought in so many players, and had so much hope. They fired their manager, bring in Nuno Espirito Santos, who's supposed to help out, and they still look terrible. And quite honestly, if Luton Town had pulled out any of the results that, god damn it, they were so close to pulling out, we're talking about how Nottingham Forest is in the F category and they should be out. That is why I gave Nottingham Forest a D minus here. I mean, you're about as close to an F as possible. You are about as close to an F. I think F has to be relegation. But holy shit, man. You cannot get much closer. It came down to the last day of the season. Not really. I know you need crazy results, but it came damn near. It came damn near to a team that Luton that had not even a quarter of the amount of money spent in their squad as this Nottingham Forest team. So ridiculous that they faced this. Burnley, I mean, I give them an F. I don't think there was really a point during the season that they seemed like they were going to get out of the relegation zone. There was like a brief period that we thought, hey, maybe if they win 3 in a row, they won 5 all season. So it wasn't really going to happen. But Vincent Kompany came in, did not show that he was really adjustable to different styles, and they got relegated. I think it's an F for there. And we'll go to Sheffield here, which also given an F here, Nick, by you. I mean, it is.
They sucked. They were horrible. F
Is there a
minus.
lower grade? Is there a G? Is there a Z even?
F minus. Incomplete. Nope. Just F. F is fine.
Yeah. So that is our final rankings. Fulham is missing, and that is honestly so goddamn true because they were really not huge players in terms of storylines here.